Oh my goodness. This set was actually crazy. I really enjoy how they depicted Boros, aka Lorehold, in the set, and it definitely makes me want to play or be more Lorehold than Boros in that essentially more of a controlling slash spell slinging archetype of red and white. And it looks really good. Combining both these colors definitely does get you that feel of being able to play in your graveyard for sorceries and instances, and more of a, like a not a technical precise way like you would think maybe a red and blue might. Actually, red and blue wouldn't even go in the graveyard. That maybe like a blue and black would, but in a more fun, sporadic, just toss some stuff in the graveyard and get it back later while also doing stuff now sort of way. And that's very apparent on things like Hofri Ghostforge, where you get a creature and you're playing with your creatures, they get strong at the moment, but then also when they die, you're getting your creature back as well as having things happen. It's definitely different than your regular graveyard shenanigans where instant sorceries matter, except they only matter in the graveyard, and that's cool. That's super cool, and it's kind of weird too because I think for the most part, Lorehold does this a little better than most other colors, and I think that's also just the matter of fact that this set is definitely instant and sorcery matters, where a lot of cards will say Magecraft, which is I think the example text is whenever an opponent casts a instant or sorcery or copies one of those, have some effect happen, and that basically plays out in a lot of these cards. So it's also the fact an artifact of that being part of the one of the newer mechanics. So you can definitely see why that would affect something like Prismari, where they're sort of pigeonholed into having a lot of instants and sorceries, especially with the fact that these colors are usually the colors behind instants and sorceries. But it does get a little weird the more further you go down into like the other colors, because I think Lorehold is the most obvious, and that if you look at Quandrix, they still do the whole +1/+1 counter thing, but it's definitely the more not technical but more mathy. Like they have a bunch of like square root sort of punny effects going on, which is great. It definitely does feel a little more aggro based in that sense, and I think that's the way they should have went. Where they're making a lot of tokens in this now, I believe, compared to what they were doing before, which was just getting +1/+1 counters, and that's also really cool. That's definitely different than Simic, what we're used to, and I like it. I definitely do like it because, of course, most times when we do Simic, we think of value engines, crazy things like that happening, and now we don't have that. It's something different, a little different take, and that's what I would assume to have with Simic, right? Because you have big green beefy boys and green, but also you have those sort of nimble, swift, cunning little things in blue that make you think like, why can't Simic just play a little more aggro based? And I guess that's where they go with the tokens, where green and blue do make tokens, and that's why we have a bunch of fractals in the Quandrix section. But I think for the most part, it stops there when it comes to how different and seeing the contrast between these two guilds. Because when you look at, I think for the most part, Golgari, aka Witherbloom, I feel like they're a little too close. Where Golgari do celebrate more in like death and decay and that sort of thing, Witherbloom seems to thrive in that. And that the only difference, and when I mean that, it sounds like basically the same thing. The only difference in that is that instead of having death triggers that drain life, Witherbloom seems to be gaining life all this, and I'm not sure how much that differentiates them. But it's cool. Like that's totally fine to not have everything so crazily different. This is perhaps the initiative to making red white more attrition based, and having colors like blue and green, which notoriously being incredibly strong, become more aggro and less attrition based, which is I'm all down for. I'm all down for that thing. We've been saying for a long time, like the blue and the green colors, and they've got a lot of attrition spells in this set too. Like don't get me wrong, like blue and green still has a lot of attrition in this set, which I think honestly it might be a little bit sided towards Lorehold being better than Semic and attrition in this deck in this format so far. But that might be false. That might be false. I had to count it up. I haven't really counted it up, but it definitely does seem like that. They have a few cards like that, and I'm down for that. I am totally down for that. Like I said before, red and white need to have ways to get catch up, where the other colors need to ensure they're not able to push as far as like the red and white colors have, because such the how far behind those colors already are. And I think this is showing there. Like if you look at, I think, which is a pretty cool card, Lorehold Velomachus, I think his name. That's the elder dragon. Like, look at him compared to the other dragons. It's like, yeah, like 7 mana is a lot, but look at the effect. Like, that's pretty strong if you can get a decent chunky spell or instant or sorcery instant off the top of your deck. That's really cool. That's super cool how that works, and it's got like a lot. I think the most keywords. Yeah, it's got the most keywords too. So it's definitely interesting. Um, yeah, that's cool. That's definitely cool. It's unfortunate that it's a little costly, but I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna that's what you pay for a dragon that has a bunch of scrolls on his neck. I've been thinking if I should make a deck around Boros, and it's like I have so many decks at that point. I have a white deck, I have a blue white deck, and I have a white red deck. But I think it's gonna happen. I really do like Lorehold. Next time I do play a red white deck, I think like unironically, I would just say, yeah, I'm playing Lorehold. Like if I'm actually playing like a non, I guess it's red white, right? Because people say Boros regardless of how actually aggressive their deck is. I think I would just say Lorehold. I'm playing Lorehold. It just sounds better in my opinion. That's totally cool. Some of the cool cards I did notice that are actually a little more similar to cards we've seen in the past are things like Radiant Scroll Wielder, which is a little weird because we did get a Wildfire Devil, which does the same thing, except, yeah, actually the same thing, except it does have a wider range and that it can actually get cards from your opponent's graveyards and thus exiling it and giving graveyard hate for them. But you also get card advantage essentially off that from playing, if your opponent's opt or something that's in their graveyard. Radiant Scroll Wielder, the white in this instance only adds lifelink and instant as to your instances and sorcery, which is a little weird because right now it feels like this is sort of shoehorned into being Boros and not necessarily like just a decent way of being Boros. I feel like if it was Boros, maybe you get rid of the random part, but regardless, like this is still a cool design for a Boros card to have. But I think they should have leaned a little more into the white portion of it. Where I think this card is probably going to be used more in EDH, so the instant and sorcery part having lifelink probably won't matter too much because not too many people play the life or the damage dealing red cards in EDH. Although that could change very time soon, right? Because there's a lot of cool cards coming out at a low toughness and power, and so things like Bolt and Shock will actually do a lot of work, but is it enough to warrant having lifelink on it? I don't know, but it's still nice to have. Like regardless of what I'm saying, like this card is still sick. Radiant Scroll Wielder. You guys might be able to see it. I'm not sure how I'm gonna edit this video, but sick card. One thing I am super sad about though is because I feel Lorehold is attrition based in this set is the command for the command cycle. Lorehold actually got the highest CMC command, and honestly, kind of bummed out about it. The command doesn't seem too crazy, and regardless of what options you choose, it seems for the most part to be like good, right? But it's just high CMC. I don't think its impact is as good as its CMC value. I don't think it's worth the cost. So you've got the 3/2 create a spirit creature token. You've got the +1/+0 creatures get indestructible, which is cool because it's like homage back to the aggro side of Lorehold, which you can see too by just like the depiction of the actual card because they're just shooting out of their scrolls. Like they're just shooting their scrolls. I was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty Boros. But we also have deal 3 damage to any target, also gain 3 life. We also have sacrifice a permanent, draw 2 cards. This could straight up just be a 5 mana, draw 2 cards. I don't think it's going to be worth it. I think for the most part, you're probably fine with sacrificing something to get in your graveyard, and then dealing 3 damage to something and then drawing 2 cards. That way, this could become essentially just a 2-for-1. And hopefully that thing you sacrificed wasn't too important to you. I hope that's the case. Because if that's the case, if that becomes like where you get the... even then, it's like... If you look at the Prismari command... Yeah, I guess that doesn't net card advantage. This one pretty hard, like nets card advantage, the draw 2 cards part, and the dealing 3 damage to any target. It definitely does have the most value. It's just hard to get there, especially being in red and white, which is why I'm like kerfuffled over it. There's some other cool cards that I looked at about like that. Especially when I was like thinking of a commander to make Plarg, Dean of Chaos. I looked at that card and I was like, yo, Plarg card is dope. But how do you even build it with Plarg? I like the idea that he's like just some crazy orc shaman, and his picture's a little weird too, because of course you'd assume he's like all in the books and stuff as orcs are, but how do you build against that second ability? Are you really just playing one card that's mana value 3 or less in your deck? That seems kind of like wasted. Of course, I don't know how often you're going to be able to actually tap this thing for 5 mana and get something really valuable, but maybe it's possible. It goes straight in your graveyard too, which is exactly what I think you want in Boros here. So maybe, okay, regardless of whether or not you can combo this off with something, getting it into your graveyard I think is what Plarg mainly does, is just getting stuff in your graveyard. Which makes me think about this a little more, because if that's the case and you build around like Lorehold ideology and that's just like putting stuff in your graveyard, this is probably fine regardless of how you build it. Even if you don't, like, if you don't do the whole combo shenanigans, just putting stuff in your graveyard is fine, right? Discard a card, draw a card. Yeah, that's probably fine. I don't know how you, for the most part, he's probably just sitting back and just discarding a card and drawing a card. But then when you get to 5 mana and you're playing red and white, you don't have too much card advantage, you're probably fine tapping out for 5, right? At instant speed. Get a 3 mana card. I mean, this is card advantage. You're using one card from your deck, putting it in your graveyard, potentially getting it back. You're playing, if you're playing Lorehold, that's probably fine. Like the 2 mana. Okay, if this is like Lolly Christmas Land, the 2 mana that you waste on actually activating this thing, if you don't get if you get a 3-cost card, is probably fine. That's probably fine, right? Paying 5 mana for a 3 mana card, that's probably not a big deal if you're ramping it up, and you're getting him out on turn 2. I just wonder, like, how are you gonna haste this guy? Is there enough hasty cards in here? Like, that's also one thing I'm wondering is, and also what kind of other cards would you put in? Would you just put spell slingery / artifact cards in here for Plarg? He seems cool. I really do want to build off him. There's also a Venerable Warsinger, which is really cool. This is essentially just a reanimator that also does not require any additional mana, which is just straight out just like crazy. I would not in a million years think of a card like this would exist in Boros, just because everyone's like, you know, Boros is aggro. This is still aggro. But it also has like the attritional side of the Lorehold attritional side, which is super cool. Yeah, Venerable Warsinger is sick. Also, Reconstruct History. Imagine if we got an actual card like Reconstruct History at rare. Because Reconstruct History is 4 mana, draw 5, but at uncommon. Like, it's weird to think about this, but like, imagine, and of course rarity has no, I don't think it has any sanction on the power of a card. But like, if they went a little bit harder on this sort of design, they could have really pushed like red white to be super spell slingy. But yeah, that's cool. That's a cool card. That's basically a majority of like the cool Lorehold cards. I do have to say there's also Mila and Luca, which is really cool, because Mila could be a mono white commander that also has a draw card. The only thing about Mila that I don't like is you have to play enough cards that your opponents want to destroy. That way they're losing a card and you keep parity. And they have to use like their single target removal on it, which might be hard because I don't know how you necessarily force someone to destroy your stuff. That's the only way you're getting card advantage off this. It protects your cards, which is different from Mangara, who essentially says, oh, you're trying to play more than one card? Well, regardless of what that card does, I'm just going to draw a card. It is a May, however, which is weird because I really hoped Mangara was a May. I don't know why, but a lot of times I wish Mangara was a May. Hey, it's fine. That's fine. Mavinda, this card was so hard to think about. It's like, how do you build a card around this that's not like a weird feather deck? I don't know, but Mavinda is sick. Mavinda is dope. And there's a lot of other cards you guys should go check out. But anyways, that's my thoughts on what I've seen so far on Lorehold. What do you guys think of Lorehold so far? Are they cool? Are they not? I think for the most part, the white seemed to be sort of just plastered on there. But there are some like white parts in the Lorehold cards, like Reconstruct History. The fact that you're getting an instant or sorcery is definitely a white part of a card. It just seems like some of the other parts were just forced, which is fine. I think for the most part, if they can get a card to be a single color, they should, because that means it can just be played more often. But maybe there's something to say, something there that's like, maybe you don't want a particular card to be played everywhere. Maybe it's better that you have this card in a more two color base deck, and that's their way of doing it. Because I don't know, give me your sorceries, assuming that card's made for EDH, just lifelink doesn't seem that big of a deal for me. Could be wrong. Maybe it's just like the stigma behind damage dealing kill spells is just way out there. Anyways, tell me what you guys think about Lorehold in the comments below. You guys like it? You guys don't? What do you guys think about it? I think that they could have done a little bit different on the other colors, but Lorehold so far has struck me as the coolest colors out of here. And I would be incredibly interested to see if we go back to Strixhaven, what it would be like. Maybe they have more campuses. Maybe some of the campuses like get destroyed during the war or whatever. That something's happening in Strixhaven, and maybe get different campuses. That'd be sick. But yeah, as per usual, tell me what you guys think. See you guys later.